Good morning. This is Northern Light for Thursday, May 18th. I'm Todd Moe. Monica Sandreski has the day off. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the state budget includes $1 billion to help transform the state's mental health care. Governor Kathy Hochul says about a third of that money will go to children's programs.
So it's a whole different ballgame than we as adults had to deal with, and we need to be understanding that. Don't say, well, we are tougher than you were. Like, no, you have no idea what these kids are going through. We have no clue.
Governor Hochul has withdrawn a plan from the state budget that includes the building of thousands of new housing units after some pushback. Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins also says lawmakers are cool to the governor's good cause eviction measure this year.
We have so many tenants who are feeling quite vulnerable because if somebody decides to raise their rent 100%, they can't stay and there's nowhere else to go. And of course, in the same way, we want to be able to help small homeowners, small landlords. So there's a big ecosystem here.
Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley has put together a book that walks people through end-of-life decision-making. And a group of high school students from St. Lawrence County are on their way to the national finals of the world's largest student rocketry competition. Stay tuned for Northern Light. Broadcast of Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio is supported by Cronin's Golf Resort, a regional destination for golf, dining, and lodging in the southern Adirondacks. Details at cronin'sgolfresort.com and AdirondackExplorer.org and the Adirondack Almanac.com, seeking solutions to the Adirondack Park's challenges in print and online. This is Northern Light. I'm Todd Moe. The president and CEO of the Olympic Regional Development Authority is retiring. Mike Pratt has worked for ORDA for 38 years, including as a Zamboni driver during the 1980 Winter Olympics. He later served as the general manager of Gore Mountain for 21 years. Pratt was brought on to lead ORDA in 2017. He oversaw multi-million-dollar renovations of many of the Olympic facilities in the Adirondacks, as well as the recent FISU World University Games. It's unclear when Pratt will officially retire, but the search is underway for his replacement. A program to address the state's affordable housing crisis was dropped from the state budget. Governor Kathy Hochul and legislators are now dampening expectations that they'll be able to agree on a comprehensive plan before the session ends next month. Karen DeWitt has more.
Hochul withdrew a plan that included the building of 800,000 new housing units over the next decade after some pushback from lawmakers. Suburban legislators objected to a provision that would allow the state to override local zoning laws in some cases. Progressive legislators, including the chairs of the Senate and Assembly Housing Committees, also said they wouldn't agree to Hochul's plan in the budget unless it also included tenant protections, including a measure known as the good cause eviction law. Now, with just over 3 weeks left in the session, the governor says she's looking at alternative ways to get some of her ideas moving, including issuing executive orders.
I think that there's some low-hanging fruit that could be achieved.
Hochul says she's considering authorizing ADUs, or accessory dwelling units, including basement apartments or backyard tiny homes, to create more affordable housing. She says she also wants to convert empty office space, which has become available as more workers do their jobs from home, into apartment units.
What opportunities I have as governor to find ways to create more housing on state-owned properties, for example, areas where I can achieve more.
The governor also says an expired program that subsidized developers who agreed to set aside some units for affordable housing, known as 421A, could perhaps be revived for projects that had begun the application process before the program sunsetted in 2022. So far, though, state lawmakers, including Senate Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, are non-committal about the governor's latest ideas.
If there are quote-unquote low-hanging fruit, then we will certainly contemplate approaching it.
As for new tenant protection, Stuart Cousins is ruling out passage of the good cause eviction measure this year.
We know that the good cause bill as it exists will not pass.
Landlord groups are against good cause. They say it goes too far and will lead to an even greater shortage of rental units. The Senate leader says she does want any comprehensive housing plan to include some tenant protections. She says they're more important than ever as the housing shortage continues.
We have so many tenants who are feeling quite vulnerable because if somebody decides to raise their rent 100%, they can't stay and there's nowhere else to go. And of course, in the same way, we want to be able to help small homeowners, small landlords. So there's a big ecosystem here, and we're trying to get the right balance.
Stuart Cousins and Governor Hochul say they and Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie continue to try to come up with a comprehensive plan that they can all agree on and enact next year. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt.
May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and the New York State budget includes $1 billion to help transform the state's mental health care system. As WRVO's Ava Pukic reports, $30 million of that is focused on children.
According to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, 1 in 6 youth aged 6 to 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for children between the age of 10 and 14. Governor Kathy Hochul stressed the need to invest in young people to help prevent mental health crises later in life.
So it's a whole different ballgame than we as adults had to deal with, and we need to be understanding that. Don't say, well, we are tougher than you were. Like, no, you have no idea what these kids are going through. We have no clue.
Dr. Ann Reagan, a pediatric psychologist at Upstate Children's Hospital, notes COVID is one factor leading to increased mental health challenges in young people, but also social media, school safety, and gun violence.
That's constant stress, and that's constant thinking and overthinking of things when your brain is not yet developed to deal with all of that input. And so that's what contributes to a lot of those struggles.
Reagan says every community needs an increase in resources.
We are struggling here at the hospital to manage those crises and make plans for what that looks like for people to get the services they need.
Hochul says she plans to convene a summit on teenage mental health next month. In Syracuse, I'm Ava Pukic for North Country Public Radio.
The manager of a limousine service was convicted of manslaughter yesterday in the 2018 Schoharie crash that killed 20 people. Passengers in the limo owned by Prestige Limousine and Chauffeur Service were celebrating a birthday when the vehicle's brakes failed. It accelerated downhill to over 100 miles an hour before crashing. 2 people in the parking lot, along with all 17 passengers and the driver, were killed. Several had North Country ties. The Plattsburgh Press-Republican has reported that 4 were sisters who grew up in Chazy Lake. Nauman Hussein ran Prestige Limousine. According to the Associated Press, prosecutors said he intentionally failed to conduct routine inspections on the vehicle that would have revealed brake defects. Hussein faces up to 15 years in prison when he's sentenced at the end of the month. A Jefferson County man is accused of firing a gun in the direction of a sheriff's deputy Tuesday night. According to the Watertown Daily Times, police were sent to the home of 45-year-old Nathan Crump in Pillar Point for a welfare check. Crump allegedly displayed a gun, then fired a single round. No one was hit. Crump then went back into his home as the officers waited for backup. While police had a perimeter set up, a fire started and quickly engulfed the residence. The Times reports that at that point, Crump exited his home and was taken into custody. He was charged with first-degree attempted murder and may face additional charges. State police and the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office are helping with the investigation. One of the candidates elected to Lake Luzure's library board Tuesday ran on a platform that opposed hosting a drag queen story hour there. The Rockwell Falls Library's plans to hold the story hour earlier this year drew some pushback from the public. According to the Glens Falls Post-Star, the library board decided to postpone the event for further research. The performer subsequently said he was no longer available. The Post-Star reports that candidate Josh Jackard ran on a platform in opposition to the Drag Queen Story Hour. He received the highest number of votes in the board election. His term begins July 1st. Get more news all the time on our website at ncpr.org. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 11 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe. Coming up in just a moment, we'll find out more about a new book. It's called Roadmaps for the Journey's End. It walks people through end-of-life decision-making. More on that new book coming up in just a moment. This is music by Peggy Lynn and Dan Duggan. And they're looking forward to performing at the Chateauguay Theater this Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Thanks to the Creatives Grant and the Foothills Art Society of Malone for helping to make the concert possible. That's Peggy Lynn, Dan Duggan in concert Saturday night, May 20th, this Saturday, 7 p.m. at the Chateauguay Theater. Northern Light is supported by Gray and Gray and Associates, CPAs, an accounting and financial services firm in northern New York with offices in Canton, Potsdam, and Spring Hill, Florida. GrayCPAS.com. And St. Lawrence Health, whose affiliation with Rochester Regional Health means more patient access to specialty care. StLawrenceHealthSystem.org. Vermont's fiscally conservative Republican governor says he hasn't decided whether to veto a number of key social programs passed by the state's Democratic-controlled legislature, but he thinks lawmakers are spending too much money. Governor Phil Scott said this week that he shares many of the goals of the legislature, which passed bills in the just completed session to expand child care, pay for universal school meals, and fight climate change, among other things. Scott says that taken together, the bills passed by the legislature could end up costing each Vermont household $1,200. In theory, the legislature has enough votes to override any Scott veto. Democratic House Speaker Joe Krawinski said lawmakers are responding to the needs of their constituents. Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. And as part of that celebration, a group of board members and staff put together a new book. It's called Roadmaps for the Journey's End. It walks people through end-of-life decision-making. Mary Jones is one of the authors of the book.
We've learned that people say, well, my family knows what I want, only for the funeral directors to find out later, no, actually, they don't know what you want, and everyone has their own opinion about that.
Jones has worked for Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley for the last 30 years. She's the current director of Family Support Services. She also teaches a death and dying course at SUNY Potsdam. Amy Feyereisel spoke with her about the new book.
We really wanted to do something for the community, and it's the lessons that we've learned along the way, and that people, if they know ahead of time, this will make things just a little bit easier.
So the book is called Roadmaps for Journey's End. And can you tell me a little bit of, what's really inside and how it's intended to be used?
Sure. So we talked about what is it that people really need to know actually before you get to the journey's end. The first part of the book is all the forms that you need. It lists all the information that your family is going to want and need in order to settle your estate. And then the second half is just walking you literally through the book. We have legal documents, we have financial documents. We walk people through the whole funeral process of what you need to be doing. And we have social media, your online presence. Do you want your family to post that you're in the hospital? Do you want your family to post that you've died? How are you going to close out those accounts? And then we talk about legacy, and legacy is not really about so much the money. It's about what are we leaving behind for our families? And it could be stories, it could be recipes, it could be photographs. What is most important that we want our family to remember about us?
Working in this field for 30 years, I imagine a lot of this inspiration comes from watching people and families struggle with this. So tell me sort of what the why was for you in creating this book.
I think that anytime you can talk about death in whatever way, that's really important. The older adults really like it because they've been talking about, okay, well, how do I get all my stuff together? And the adult children really like it. It's like, okay, good, we're going to sit down and talk about this. There's just a lot. There's a lot to know. When you think about it, after somebody dies, you're very grief-stricken. And the last thing that you really want to do is do all this paperwork. And after a death, it's all paperwork. And this is not the time that you really want to be going through everything to figure it out. What can you be doing ahead of time to know where everything is?
You're partnering with the St. Lawrence County Office for the Aging to get the word out about the book. Tell me a little more about that.
We've started with the dining sites. In May, we hope to expand and go to some of the bigger hubs around St. Lawrence County, like Ogdensburg, Potsdam, Messina. So we're going to be doing presentations out in the community in the evening where people can come and listen and ask questions, and we can redirect them. And we're all worried about when you retire, do you have enough money? What are the resources I can tap into? What's the education I can tap into? So I think the Office for Aging has been just a great partner for all of this.
Mary Jones is Director of Family Support Services at Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley. She spoke with Amy Frey-Reisel about their new book they've created called Road Maps for Journey's End. It's a step-by-step guide to end-of-life decision-making, and the book can be found online at www.hospiceslv.org. There's a physical version and an e-book. Both are free until Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley runs out of physical copies. Then they'll be $5 each. Again, you can find out more about the book Road Maps for the Journey's End on the website www.hospiceslv.org. You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe. Monica Sandreski has the day off. Coming up in just a moment, Hewelton's Rocketeers heading to national competition this weekend. Also, join us for more of Morning Editions starting at 8:30. Weather Service says a chilly day, at least a chilly morning. Frost around the region this morning. Highs today in the 60s for much of the region. Then tomorrow, highs in the 70s. A mix of sun and clouds the next couple of days. And then some rain moving in for the weekend. A good chance of rain showers Saturday and Sunday with highs over the weekend around 70. Today, highs low 60s. And then tonight, lows in the 40s. Tomorrow, partly cloudy skies with a high around 70 in the afternoon. 40 degrees and some morning sunshine here in Canton right now. A group of young men from St. Lawrence County is on its way to the Washington, D.C. area to compete in a national rocketry competition this weekend. The Heuvelton Space Dogs rocket team is among 100 finalists competing in the American Rocketry Challenge. It's a big honor. The group of 6 beat out hundreds of other teams from across the country to qualify. The Space Dogs are following in the footsteps of a legacy of budding scientists and engineers from this small school district in St. Lawrence County. Physics teacher and team mentor Bob Kennedy took a team to the first American Rocketry Challenge national competition back in 2003, where it finished in 8th place. Heuvelton's Rocketeers have had 4 top 30 finishes in the last 18 years. So here's the challenge. The students must design a rocket using software, build it from scratch, and then test fly it over and over again. This year's competition featured nearly 800 teams and 4,500 students from almost every state. Each team was required to design, build, and launch model rockets that safely carry an egg to an altitude of 850 feet, stay airborne for about 45 seconds, and return to the ground safely. Here's Bob Kennedy.
Every year there's an altitude, a different altitude that we're trying to achieve. We're graded on that basically by an absolute value of above or below that particular altitude. And then there's probably the toughest part of this is hitting the flight time. From the moment the rocket leaves the launch pad to when it lands, there's a window of time that this must happen in. It's 42 to 45 seconds for us this year. Every year they change the mode of recovery. Some years there's one parachute and the whole rocket has to come down under the one parachute. Sometimes it's 2 parachutes. This year, the rocket has to come apart and each part of it has to come down by parachute. Every year there's eggs we have to launch. They represent the astronauts, and if there's any damage whatsoever to an egg, even the slightest crack, you're disqualified from the competition.
So I remember building model rockets in my teens and launching them in a hayfield on a calm summer evening. But I'm amazed by what these high school teams have accomplished, like figuring out how the way a rocket is built calculates into its altitude and resistance. Willem Gleason, the team's project manager, and Braden Dawson give me a tour of their roughly 2-foot-tall rocket that the team named Legend, from tail fins and 2 parachutes to nose cone.
So this is the altimeter. This is what it measures the difference in air pressure, which gives us how high it goes. And it also measures the time, and it gives us a bunch of other flight data, like the ejection charge when it goes off. So this is what holds it in there, and it measures the difference in air pressure. We poke holes in the side of one of our body tubes so that air gets in, and it can read all of that data.
And then we move up a little further, right?
So this is where...
That's where the parachutes go?
Yeah, this is where our parachutes go. So inside of here, there is a Kevlar pad. So what happens is we wrap our parachutes, and then we put them in, and then we put it in the body tube, and then when it goes out, like when it ejects, it unravels, opens up, and then hopefully we have a safe landing. Up here is where our egg goes. So inside of here is some soft foam, and then around it is some more blue foam. Our egg goes right in there. It doesn't move around. Then we put another piece of foam on top, then a bulkhead on top, put the nose on, and we've had 0 egg problems this year.
So was there trial and error with that? In terms of...
Well, we really just went off of designs from the years past. So last year you had 2 eggs. But last year we used about the same ordeal here. But instead it was sideways, and you would put the eggs in this way. And it would sit up in the front just like this one does. So what we need to do is we need to bring down the front half, which has the egg in it, the quickest. So we use our small chute, which will bring it down quicker, and then our back end, which is The big chute will bring it down slower. So they'll come down around at the same time because that's got a little bit more mass in it than this one does, or than the front half does. But they'll still come down, and this will just keep it from breaking and hitting the ground way too hard.
Is anybody really interested in rocketry and you're thinking, yeah, NASA is maybe something I want to shoot for at some point in my career?
Yeah. I mean, this program has taught me many engineering skills and how to come at problems better. And rockets have always been fun for me. Always launched the little Estes rockets in Boy Scouts or just at home. It's always interesting to me.
My name's Adam West, a sophomore at Hubleton Central.
Tell me about launching these rockets, and is there just an element of fun as well? I mean, you get to see these things go up, and the parachute comes out, and what do you cheer, and it comes down to the ground again? Tell me a little bit about that sense of joy with when it all sort of works, right?
It's like a real big sense of accomplishment, you know? It's like we spent the time, like the furious hours, just trying to get every single variable, every single aspect of the rocket right. And once we finally did it, like when we got...
Sorry. Yeah, at this point, my Star Wars ringtone reveals my geeky side. That was our two. I'm a Star Wars nerd. I'm sorry. So are we all. Okay, cat's out of the bag. All right. The joy of seeing it all sort of come together.
Yes. Yeah. It's like we took the time to make sure every single variable was correct. Every single aspect of the rocket was just perfect to the T. And when we finally see, oh, hey, we got a perfect score, it's like you get that real feeling of accomplishment. You know, it's like seeing your child ride without training wheels for the first time, you know?
Okay, jokes aside about the geekiness of building and flying a model rocket, Bob Kennedy is really proud of this year's team and the past successes of his students. He says many team member alumni have pursued STEM careers and are currently engineers, teachers, or are pursuing degrees in science, physics, and astronomy. Drew Demers just finished his second year at Rochester Institute of Technology, and he stopped by for a visit and pep talk with this year's team.
I was involved in this program for, I think, 3 years, and also Mr. Kennedy ran a robotics club, too, for 2 years, so I was involved in that as well.
What are you studying at RIT?
I'm studying physics at RIT.
Oh, right.
Yeah, a lot because of, what I did in high school in robotics and rocket club, and you can say, like, oh, yeah, I'm going into a STEM degree because... I'll help out humanity or I'll make a lot of money or whatever. But at the end of the day, it is just a lot of fun. And there's not, science is very fun. And, learning all these equations and all these laws and everything, it's the key that unlocks the door that, you can launch rockets and build robots and stuff like that. It's really awesome. It's a lot of fun.
So from computer designs to gluing, sanding, and painting balsa wood tail fins to early morning test flights, Bob Kennedy says it's been a lot of work for his students and a lot of hands-on experience for the team.
It perfectly models the engineering process. In fact, it doesn't model it. The kids are acting as engineers. They're designing the rocket, but then they build the thing from scratch. I mean, they buy off-the-shelf parts, but not in kit form. So they have to order the body tube based on the dimensions they want, balsa wood by the sheet, nose cones. They have to figure out what nose cones they want. And then, then there's the flight testing, which is really the best part of it. I'm sure most mechanical engineers like to see what they've built, if
it flies.
Soaring. If it flies.
The Hubleton team will get a chance to display Legend, their red rocket, at the Senate Office Building in Washington, D.C. this weekend. They'll likely meet military officials, members of Congress, upper management of major aerospace companies, as well as current and past astronauts. And the team that brings home the title of national champion will also win an all-expense-paid trip to the International Rocketry Challenge at the Paris Air Show in June. The top 10 teams this weekend will split $100,000 in scholarship money. You can find photos a little later this morning on our website of the Hubleton rocketry team, and that's at ncpr.org. do it for Northern Light for this Thursday, May 18th. I'm Todd Moe. Thanks for listening. Back to more of Morning Edition. Be well.